So some time has really passed since I first decided to make my experiences public. And for me, that was a significant milestone for a lot of different reasons. One being that, if you tell somebody, oh, I saw a UFO, chances are they may look at you a little funny and they may not believe you, but it's not a huge thing. But if you tell them you've seen 5 UFOs and you think maybe you've seen a cryptid or 2, or maybe if you tell them you had multiple poltergeist haunting experiences, then eyebrows get raised and basically friends may shun you, relationships may end. So it's with a lot of trepidation that I'm doing this. And I've shared a lot of this with my long-term partner, Rebecca, and she's had one key concern out of me doing all this, and that is the hitchhiker effect. And if you're not familiar with what the hitchhiker effects, we're going to get into that in just a minute. But I felt it was really pertinent to share this with you. There is one big story that I have yet to tell you. And there's a reason why I've reserved doing that pretty much for last of all the big stories. And it's the story of the Wallace House. Equally, this has been hard to write about as well, because believe it or not, when you go to put this on camera or you go to commit it to words, you have to face it. You have to dive into it. You have to get details that you otherwise might not be so willing to have to go in depth on. You're reliving it. You're putting yourself really right back in that moment to when whatever it was happened to you. And for me, there's a lot of trauma of feeling trapped, of feeling helpless, of feeling nobody can help me with this. And, the things with the Wallace House, started and then continued quite up literally until the day I left there. And what does that mean and how does this all tie together? Well, the hitchhiker effect is the dominant theme here. I was convinced that my ex-wife had brought this thing to our house, and I'm still not convinced of that, but there may be some other dynamics at play that might point to there being other circumstances if something could have attached to me, is my point. So the other reason for this being really important is because of why so many things have recently occurred. Now, granted, when you start diving into this and you start opening yourself up to having additional experiences, for me personally, I have to try to remain very diligent and very fact-based. It is easy to allow an active imagination to go wild or, whatever. So I'm saying this because the recent things that have happened just leave me scratching my head. I mean, it's so weird. And this is why even back then, the phenomenon would present itself in the most weirdest, strangest, bizarre ways that just made absolutely no sense. And recently I've had a number of things happen where I'm going like, what in the world is going on? So I'm going to get into depth with those. But the main thing I'm going to say right up front is, if you've got an interest in the paranormal and you're wanting to jump into this, In other words, do investigations, or maybe you've experienced something and you're open to having more experiences. Do thorough research before you are gung-ho about allowing yourself to be known in this space. And the reason why I say that is because although it may be rare, although it may be, it doesn't guarantee something is going to happen. But if you do have something follow you, attached to you, good luck. Point blank, I walked away from a house, and it's hard to envision. Home is usually the largest investment anybody will ever make in their lives. And this was my first home. I had spent a small fortune to make it my sanctuary. It had a 18 by 36 in-ground pool that had a 4-level redwood deck all the way around it. It was really cool. I mean, it was like the ultimate bachelor pad, really. And I walked from it because I didn't have any other way of getting out of this situation. So it's for me to say this to you and say, I would not wish that experience on anybody. I'm being deadly serious about it. I would not, just use caution. Know what you're getting into. Use caution. Be smart. Don't go seeking out the darker elements. That's what I'm going to say. So when we get back, we're going to get straight into the hitchhiker effect. The hitchhiker effect. Largely, this has been associated with Skinwalker Ranch, skinwalkers in general, in that people who have had paranormal experiences, specifically associated with Skinwalker Ranch, would have this phenomenon where people would come on the ranch, have these experiences, and next thing you know, within their homes, they're having these same experiences, or it's a loved one or a friend or somebody else. So it's like something is attached to them and they're bringing it with them, and it's spreading like a virus. And when I first heard this explained, I was like, you know what? I get it. And I think I understand this, and it makes sense to me. So there's a few channels out there that I really absolutely adore. And it's because they can do this so well. And they've done it for, 3 times as long, 4 times as long, 20 times as long as I've been doing this. So I'm going to rely on a couple of cats and just do a couple of clips from one of the channels I follow, which is Mysterious Universe. These guys are maybe the best YouTubers I've seen as far as the quality of their content, the research they put into it, and the thoroughness of their work. They've seen it all, really. So anyway, let's take a look at one of their clips on hitchhiker effect, and we'll talk about it later.
This is actually an extension of the Hitchhiker hypothesis, which we're going to be going into for this show.
Oh, the idea that if you're messing with this dark paranormal phenomena, it latches onto you and everyone in your circle.
Everyone else. And it's funny because everyone knows everything about epidemiology after the pandemic now. So you might know the whole R system, like R0. So how much, once you contract something, how many other people do you give it to? What's the factor? So the R0 factor for paranormal phenomena apparently has been statistically worked out to be a factor of R0 factor of 3. So it means for every single person that engages in paranormal phenomena, they will pass the hitchhiker effect onto up to 3 other people.
Well, as I mentioned, one of the chief concerns has been from Rebecca is don't bring anything in this house. So I want to kind of give you a quick rundown of the kind of order of a chronology of this whole thing, okay? So the first thing that occurs is I make a commitment to telling these stories. And the next thing that really happened was I reached out to the Spills family, and I reached out to my friend John Ward, because they're two of the biggest corroborators of the stories that I've told. And I also reached, was able to at one point to talk to my ex-wife at the point where I knew I was going to be telling these stories. And the Spills responded very favorably, and it was unnerving to find out that, because I was hoping maybe I was wrong in my recollection. And then with John, same thing. He remembers stuff I didn't, I remember stuff he didn't, but collectively it's all there. And then with my ex-wife, she responded angrily, like, that's not what happened. And she was so adamant about it. And I'm like, then she made the thing of saying that the one of the biggest things that happened involving a shadow entity, that she said that did not happen then. That happened in her childhood, which is just batshit nuts, because if this thing had been with her since childhood, good Lord, I can't, I pity her, because no wonder, drugs is the outlet. Trying to escape it would make you turn to anything, really. It's that oppressive. So move the needle forward some more. So I commit to doing this, and I'm actually starting to work on it. Well, it really took off when I started committing this to film. So the minute the camera was turned on, it seemed like within a few weeks, again, I never made the correlation until I start backing up and looking at it from a 30,000 foot view. And then you start seeing the bigger picture of how some of this can be related, and not only related, but you see how it kind of has followed this order of occurrence. So the first thing is the weird ass thing with the trees on where I walk the dogs. And there's a link for that but down below for that episode. I'm not going to go into a great detail of it, but basically there's this weird light phenomenon, and I very scientifically tried to figure out where this light source was, and where the light source should be, there's nothing there, or at least nothing visible. But it was such an oddball thing that made me scratch my head. It happened 3 times, 2 in the week, 1 week, and then the following week it happened once. And I happened to film it that last time. So that's where the video comes from. That's in that episode. So that was, one of the first things. The next thing, which I haven't committed to camera, that I may talk more about in a later episode, but I'm going to give you the synopsis of this one, was I was walking the dogs again, and we turned a corner, and I'm going to show you a picture of this tree. And this is an altered image. I've put, used Photoshop to kind of create similarly to what I saw. That and this picture is from the daytime. I had to make it nighttime, so bear with me. But anyway, so I'm walking the dogs, and we're getting up close to this tree that you see in this picture, and the dogs are all pulling me towards the far side of the road, towards a neighbor's driveway. And right as they're doing this, and we're probably but maybe 15 feet or so past the tree, I hear this really bizarre sound, which sounded like a snarl. And what I mean by a snarl versus a growl's like, "Urgh," and a snarl is more like that kind of a sound, And this thing was so guttural and so low. It really I was taken aback by it. I was kind of a little bit, not in shock, but I was a little bit like, whoa, because, typically, that type of sound an animal means business. And, I'd done wildlife work when I worked for a pest control company. So I was very familiar with a pissed off, big ass male raccoon sounds like. And that was the most logical conclusion, was a raccoon. And it wasn't that. I've never heard raccoon make any sound like this. So I have no idea what it was. Later on I'm listening to other sounds, and I heard a bobcat sound that was similar, but the rest of it didn't make any sense. So it was like this deep guttural thing. And then, so the dogs have pulled me and keep kind of pulling away, and they're kind of trying to get away from this area. So I hear the snarl, and I hear like a little bit of rustle, and it took me like a second. And then I was like, oh, dum, you got a flashlight in your hand. So I turned the flashlight on, right? And I'm flashing the light at the tree, and I'm looking for something moving. And I knew it wasn't the neighbor's dogs that's like behind her property, because they got like a bloodhound and some other dogs. So they're kind of a big dog, and once they start barking, they're not gonna snarl and then make no other noise. They're gonna bark and woo woo. If you've ever heard of bloodhound, they got one of the coolest barks ever. But they got a couple big dogs. That was my point. They weren't outside. That's not what this was. And so I use the flashlight, and I don't see anything. So I take the flashlight up the tree, right? And as I'm looking up in the tree, I'm like, what is that there? And for just a split second, I saw a black mass right at the V in the tree, which I'll show again here. And a couple of eyes, so it was weird because, like if you, like a possum or a raccoon or a cat, something that, at night you kind of, even ambient light, kind of, you see a little bit of a reflection. I didn't see a reflection. I didn't see the reflection of the eyeballs until my light physically hit, by there. Now, I was far enough away that the flashlight did not go deep into the tree to where I could illuminate that, whatever that was. More so, it had the limbs, and then this thing just looked like a black mass, and then I could see reflection of two eyes. And I was like, it startled me. And so I was like, I had to, trying to get the dogs. And so I barely turned my head, but this thing had disappeared anyway. I couldn't, because I was looking around for it, I couldn't see it. And then I was trying to get the dogs together. And so I got the dogs, and finally I drugged them with me to go over to my neighbor's yard and go around the tree with the flashlight. And I never saw anything. I never saw anything in the tree. I never saw anything run. I never saw anything depart. I never saw anything hop to another tree. So, it left me shrugging my shoulders and scratching my head, because I have no idea what the hell that was. Something, a piece of wildlife still makes the most sense. I'm not saying this was absolutely some chupacabra or something like that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it was an odd thing in a series of odd things that let me clue into the fact that there may be a little bit of connectedness to all this. So there's that one. So fast forward to maybe No, hold on. I think the next thing that occurred was Will and I took the dogs to a place that's not far from here. That's near down 95th Street. Before you get to 7, it turns into a thing called Prairie Star Parkway or something like that. And before it gets to Highway 7 here in Kansas, there's a little park that's off to the side. Excuse me. And there's like a little tiny parking lot, and then one way is a trail that leads towards some residential area, and the other goes pretty far out, a couple miles, just into the forest or the woods, and just a little paved trail. But it's in some really odd locations there. So anyway, this goes on for a long ways, and so in this space, I went by myself, and I had that kind of uneasy feeling that's like Will calls it his spidey sense, but for me it's like, when you're in the forest and you're in the woods, there's this, like, it's such a calming relaxation feeling I get, it's like nature kind of a thing. And then there's this thing, I don't know if it's imminent danger or what it is, but where I get really like hyper alert, and it's often accompanied by the feeling that you're being watched. And I'll tell you, it doesn't matter if it's someplace local or if it's an hour and a half into the forest. It's always a little unnerving when you have that sensation. And I had that sensation. So I walked some more and turned around. Dogs and I left, and I took Will back there with me, and we went at night. And I heard, and I'm going to tell this story in more in depth, but I heard a sound that was so weird that I had no idea what the hell it is, because it's like something pretending to be an owl is what it sounded like. It was like a really weird, like where part of it sounded like an owl, so it went like it was like this really weird laugh, and it was on one side of us, and then a second later it was on the other side of us, and it was really weird. And so then with my other child, Jaden, who's older than Will, 3 of us go back there at night and had a completely weird ass experience that I'm not going to get into on this episode, but look for that. My gut told me that either there was some people, like either homeless or whatever, that's living in there that was jacking with us. But this other thing that occurred, I'm just left. It's so weird. I'm just left with, what just happened, and so all of us, Will, Jaden, and myself, were all left scratching our heads. We had no idea what all that was about. Then let's move a little forward some more. And then about a week and a half ago, it's in middle of the night. I'm working on stuff late, and I have my little space here. It's in our guest best bedroom / my office type of thing. So the dogs and I are laying in here, and I'm watching some TV, and it's really, really late, about 1 a.m. And Charlie's asking to go outside, so I open up the window, and I made this, I use a ladder, and got some mats, and I kind of made like a little ramp for them. They're little dogs, so I made a ramp for them to go out the window and kind of run down into the backyard and be able to run back up. They love it. So anyway, so Charlie, as I open up the window there, I still got the screen, and he's kind of growling. And then he never does this. He went from laying on the bed to running across and laying on the floor by the door. And, I was like, what in the hell? And all of a sudden I hear somebody say, help, somebody help me. Help, somebody help me. And I'm like, but it sounded like it was in my backyard, which really threw me for a loop. And so I'm looking out the window and I'm like, hello? Then I hear it again. They didn't respond to me like, oh, hello, hey. It wasn't anything like that. It was just the same thing. Hello, help me. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on out here? So I get the flashlight and I'm kind of like just poking around. First, I'm just trying to see, where this room is located. There's another room, and then it's, there's a little bit of yard, then our fence, and then the neighbor's house. In the neighbor's house, they have a jacuzzi, a hot tub that's outside. And so I'm like, maybe it's just them. I'm looking over there. Nobody's outside. I'm looking to see if anybody is outside. And I was like, well, if somebody's really in trouble, then I need to help them. So I get my flashlight. I put on some slippers and I go out, and the weather was actually fairly nice back then. And so I go out on my back porch and I'm standing there with the flashlight looking around. I'm like, hello, and saying it a little bit louder, that way, if there's somebody who truly needed help, they would hear my voice and they would call out, and then I would be able to kind of pinpoint where they're at and then try to find them. And not only did I not hear anything else, but the sensation I got was, get your ass back inside now. And I didn't feel like it was just me, kind of freaking out about this. I mean, because if you know me, I'm a little bit more cool. I'm very cool under pressure. In the face of, bullets flying, I'm probably going to be hyper focused on what is it that I need to do here in this situation. So it wasn't just my natural reaction, but I was overwhelmed with this sensation of, you need to get inside. And so I quickly departed back inside. I kept the window kind of just cracked a little bit so I could at least listen to see what was going on out there. But it was so weird because it didn't sound like it was like a street away or anything else like that. It quite literally sounded like it was in my, 30 feet away from the window. I don't have a clue. I have no idea what that was. I know what I heard. But when you add it all up, it equates to the same trickster, deception entity that, I'm not saying it's the same exact thing that I dealt with all those years ago, but something I feel like is fucking with me. Pardon my French, but that's what it feels like. And it's not a fun feeling. So what's happened since that? Well, once, right around the same period, I thought our son Sebastian had come from either the bathroom, upstairs bathroom, or from the bedroom, and was walking past me because I was prepping food in the kitchen, and head downstairs. I mean, I saw the person walk past on my peripheral vision and head down the stairs. And I thought it was odd that he didn't speak to me, and just say, hey, what you cooking? Or, hey, how's it going? I mean, he always speaks to me when I see him for the first time for the day. It'd be odd not to, right? And so I asked, because I was like, well, that's really weird. Did I do something to piss him off or something? I really clueless. So I asked Rebecca about it. Hey, was Sebastian just up here? Because I swore I just saw him go downstairs, but he didn't say anything to me. And she's like, no, I don't think he's been up here. So when Sebastian later came up for dinner, I said, were you up here earlier? And he said, no. And he goes, why? And I go, I would have swore I saw you walk past me and then go down the stairs. And he said, no. And he swore to God that he wasn't upstairs. So yeah. And so between that and the room, and in this room, there's been a couple times where I'm working on stuff, specifically working on graphics for the show or working on something, and I've seen movement, kind of, and basically ignored it. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, for most people, if you go to some abandoned building and you do, some EVP work in there, or taking photos, or you're got a spirit box or something, whatever it is you're doing, it's there. When it is in your own space, where your sanctuary, where you call home, your house or whatever, and you cannot get away from it because it's there. It's where you are. That's rough. That's really rough. So, moral story is, be cautious when you're doing these, because you don't know if you're going to bring something home with you. 2, if you do, it's not going to stop with you. You're going to give it like a virus to somebody else, and they're going to have an experience. I feel, on one hand, the experiences Jaden's had since he's been staying with us is somewhat reassuring, from the fact that, it gives, it makes me feel good. I'm not crazy. But on the other hand, I wouldn't wish for him to ever experience some of the more terrifying shit that I have. I would spare him that. So that's it, folks. Just do your research, know what you're getting into before you start poking around. And if you feel like you've had this experience, or you feel like you are having this experience, man, you got my sympathy. What I can tell you is about what do you do? Well, I don't know. I have a theory, though. My theory is this: ignore it. Don't give it power. Ignore it. You'll piss it off. I'm going to tell you that right now. So it can go a myriad of different directions. But I found that in the last few years that I was at the Wallace house, I simply had to start ignoring what was occurring. Otherwise, I'd lose my damn mind. I just ignored it. If there was somebody there, standing there, I'd ignore it. Pretend like I didn't see it. I didn't react to it. If I woke up and found, every dish I owned stacked in the middle of the kitchen floor, I ignored it. I just go, I'd put them right back up. I wouldn't give it the power of freaking out and saying, fuck is going on here, and all this other stuff, and then allowing the fear to magnify within me. As these things have occurred lately, obviously there is a fear component in it for me that I'm desperately trying to control, from the standpoint of I'm seeing these telltale signs. Now, obviously it didn't start the same way it did back then, but some of the progression is the same. There's a number of just weird ass shit that doesn't make any sense. And then there's the poltergeist element. There's the trickster element. There's all these things to get your attention, and eventually keeps escalating and escalating and escalating. Sometimes with physical harm, sometimes without. I've been scratched. I've been scratched multiple times. I've had severe pain in very isolated areas, like when we last did the tunnel, standing upstairs. I was telling the story about what our experience was down there, and I had this super intense pain in both of my kneecaps. Just there was nothing. Then there was this super intense pain that if I had not sat down, I feel like I would have fallen down because I couldn't stand any longer. The pain in my knees was so intense. And then 2 to 3 minutes later, gone, with no residual pain, no discomfort, no oddness about it. Just there was no pain. Everything was normal, feeling good. Super intense pain, no pain. So all these things are the things you don't want. You don't want to have those scratches. You don't want to have those things. So the way I kind of like put a damper on it was I started ignoring everything that was occurring. It didn't work at first, as far as, I was still getting scared, but over time, it did seem to work. And it did seem like, it less and less is occurring. But when it did occur, there would be like little blow-ups, type like it was saving up the energy and then going, oh yeah, well, boogly, boogly, boogly. And that's that's not fun. So anyway, that's all I got for you. Beware of the hitchhiker effect. It's a strange world out there. Keep it weird. Next time on Magnet Paranormal Talk, we decided to go back there and go at night, flashlights. And Billy and I both have an EMF tool. Both boys mentioned that they just didn't see a face. And
this device in my hand will record images that you wish to send to us. It's the same as communicate with a piece of electronics. Instead of words, you can show pictures.
That looks like a place. Like it's rubble. It looks like a death area, a death place.
Yeah, it looks like a fireplace or something. I don't know.
No, it looks like a basement.
Something just touched my backpack.
Hey, what's going on, para people? It is Will from Magnet Paranormal. If you could just take a moment out of your day to like and subscribe, that'd be greatly appreciated, and it would help out our channel a lot. Thank you for your moment of time. Go back to what you were doing.